Right now, as you're watching this, if you were standing on a street in Shanghai, Shenzhen, or Urumqi, the Chinese state could identify you in seconds, track where you came from, see where you're going, pull up everyone you've met in the last 24 hours, replay every payment you've made, scan every message you've sent on the country's dominant apps, and decide in real time whether you are a normal citizen or someone who needs to be slowed down, flagged, or erased from public life. That's not science fiction. That's the logical endgame of a system China has spent the last 20 years building. A system far more integrated, automated, and behavior-shaping than anything the Stasi, the KGB, or even the post-9/11 SA ever had. And it's not just a surveillance system, it's a control system. That's why it's the most dangerous surveillance architecture in history. Most people outside China still think in analog terms. Cameras everywhere. They read your messages. They have a social credit score. Those bits are true but misleading because they make the system sound like a collection of tools. It's not. It's a vodes machini, a 4-stage mechanism designed to turn every citizen into a transparent, trackable, and programmable node in a vast network of power. Once you understand those 4 stages, you can see how it works and how pieces of it are quietly being copied and imported into your country too. Stage 1 is bind every person to a single, inescapable digital identity. Every surveillance regime in history started here, but none have done it as completely as modern China. In East Germany, the Stasi kept paper files. In the Soviet Union, internal passports tried to pin people to locations and jobs, but there were gaps, errors, delays. China, by contrast, has spent decades fusing every aspect of a person into one linked identity, your national ID number, your face, your voice print, your phone number, your bank accounts, your health records, your school history, your travel history, your family ties. Real name registration is mandatory for SIM cards, for social media accounts, for most major online services. Internet cafes scan your ID, hotels report your data, train stations and airports tie every ticket to your ID and your face. On paper, each of these is about safety and order. In practice, it means there is no such thing as an anonymous life. To exist outside this ID mesh is to be treated as suspicious by default. Stage 2 instrument every space and channel where you move, speak, or spend. I say once identity is bound, the next step is to turn the entire country into a sensor array. Cameras went up first, hundreds of millions of them. Urban intersections, subway stations, apartment entrances, highway toll booths, school gates, shopping malls, parks. At first, like in other countries, they were justified as basic CCTV, crime deterrence, traffic enforcement, anti-terror measures. Then came the upgrades, high-resolution lenses, night vision network connectivity, and most importantly, facial recognition AI. The system branded Skynet and later sprouting variants like Sharp Eyes turned passive cameras into active hunters, scanning faces, matching them against blacklists and watch lists in real time. At the same time, the digital layer was instrumented. The Great Firewall doesn't just block foreign sites, it watches what citizens do on domestic platforms. Super apps like WeChat and Alipay combined messaging, payments, transport, delivery, social media, and even government services into single gateways. Every chat, every payment, every taxi ride, every food order, every location ping, all flows through a few choke points that the state can access. In other countries, your bank knows your spending, and your phone company knows your location, and your social app knows your friends. In China, those streams are increasingly merged. Stage 3. Fins integrate those streams into centralized systems that score and predict behavior. The old surveillance states had oceans of data, but no real-time analytics. Files sat in cabinets. Human informants filtered and summarized. China's system is different because it's computational from the ground up. In Xinjiang, for example, the Integrated Joint Operations Platform ingests records from checkpoints, cameras, Wi-Fi sniffers, banking logs, license plate readers, and informants to generate automated pre-crime flags people who bought too much fuel, used suspicious apps, contacted foreign numbers, or simply deviated from their usual routines. These flags can trigger visits, interrogations, detentions. Nationally, the same logic scales. Machine learning systems look for normal clusters, trending topics, sentiment shifts. Health code apps introduced during COVID quietly normalized the idea that the state can score every person green, yellow, or red, and change that score instantly based on opaque rules. WeChat and Alipay became not just payment apps, but enforcement levers. If your health code turned red, you couldn't board a train, enter a mall, or even reach your office. There was no appeals court, the algorithm was the decision. Stage 4. Screws use that integrated system not just to watch, but to shape, reward, and punish. This is where surveillance becomes existentially dangerous, where the system stops being about catching bad guys and becomes about its engineering obedience. China's much discussed social credit is less a single score and more an ecosystem of incentives and blacklist tools, travel bans, restrictions on high-speed rail and flights, bans on luxury hotels, public shaming on digital billboards, blocking your children from certain schools. A court order can put you on a lale, the dishonest person list. Suddenly you can't buy property, can't book nice seats. Your face and name flash on cinema screens as a warning to others. Local versions of social credit add their own nudges, extra points for model citizens, penalties for uncivilized behavior. Overlay that on top of the AI-driven monitoring, and you have something no previous regime had. And as always on behavioral feedback loop. The system doesn't just record what you did, it continually pressures you to do what it wants. Step too far out of line, and your life subtly, then brutally degrades. Look back through history, and you'll see plenty of attempts at total surveillance. The Stasi in East Germany employed one informant for every U60 citizens and maintained an estimated 6 million paper files. The Soviet KGB combined human networks with wiretaps and mail interception on a massive scale. The Nazis built their own elaborate registries aided by punch card technology. After 9/11, the US NSA constructed immense digital listening posts, tapping fiber optic cables and collecting metadata from phones and internet giants, as leaked by Edward Snowden. All of those were ominous. All of them had one thing in common: friction, human labor, technical limits, gaps between collection and action. The thing that makes China's system uniquely dangerous is that the friction is being engineered out. In practical terms, what does this mean for an ordinary person in a Chinese city? It means your face is your ID whether you consent or not. Walk through a train station, cameras at the entrance grab a high-resolution image. Software matches it against your national ID, and any relevant lists outstanding warrants, unpaid fines, political flags, even simple demographic tags. If you buy a ticket, your identity, origin, destination, and payment are all tied together and stored. Board a subway gate, cameras log throughput, crowding, and faces. Your phone pings the network, tracing your movements even if you never open an app. Meet a friend in a cafe, your payments, their payments, and your proximity are all observable. Post a comment on social media. Your real name, IP address, device ID, and text are analyzed. Use certain keywords too often. Your content may be throttled, your account warned. Your in-person activities watched more closely. During the COVID era, the health code system showed just how powerful this integration is. Officially, it was about infection control. Your app displayed a green, yellow, or red QR code depending on your test status, travel history, and possible exposure. In reality, it became AR's movement permit system. People with green codes moved freely. Those with yellow codes were restricted. Those with red codes could be forcibly quarantined. When protests flared in Henan over frozen bank deposits, some residents reported that their health codes mysteriously flipped to red as soon as they approached the protest zone or even bought train tickets to travel there. Overnight, they became public health risks and were physically prevented from moving. No judge, no trial. An invisible line of code turned a financial grievance into a health threat, and a digital system built for one emergency became a lever for something else. Layer onto this the emerging digital yuan, the CNY, China's central bank digital currency. Unlike cash, which leaves no digital trail and can be exchanged peer-to-peer, a CBDC is inherently traceable and programmable. Every digital yuan unit can, in theory, carry rules where it can be spent, when it expires, what categories of goods it can purchase. Tie that into the ID system, the social credit ecosystem, and the AI analytics. And the state doesn't just know what you spend. It can step-by-step steer and constrain that spending. A person flagged as high risk might find their digital wallet limited, no plane tickets, no hotel bookings, no donations to certain organizations. Model citizen might receive direct stimulus discounts, faster tax refunds. The same technology that could make payments efficient can also turn money into a remotely controlled leash. Then there is Xinjiang, the testing ground where many of these tools were pushed to their extremes. In Xinjiang, reports and leaked documents describe a network of checkpoints bristling with cameras and scanners, compulsory ID swipes, phone inspections that copy entire contact lists and app contents into police databases, mandatory apps like CleanNet Guard that monitor usage and flag suspicious content, and a system that scores people based on everything from beard length to whether they filled up a car too many times. People marked by the IJOP algorithm were pulled into education camps, interrogated, or worse. You can argue about exact numbers and narratives, but the architecture is clear. Xinjiang showed what happens when the surveillance machine is given a target population and told to maximize control. Techniques refined there, from real-time facial recognition to mass DNA collection to algorithmic flagging, don't stay contained. They flow back into the national toolkit. Why does this matter to you if you don't live in China? Because the most dangerous thing about China's surveillance system isn't just that it exists. It's that it works well enough to tempt other governments and corporations to copy pieces of it. Authoritarian regimes from Central Asia to Africa have already bought Chinese-made Safe City. Packages, turnkey camera networks, facial recognition, cloud platforms, Korean training. Chinese firms like Hikvision, Dahua, Huawei, and others are embedded in surveillance infrastructure worldwide. Sometimes the buyer is a dictatorship. Sometimes it's a nominal democracy that still finds all-seeing tools useful for public safety. The technology doesn't care about labels. Once installed, the temptation is always the same: broaden the watch list, lower the threshold, automate the punishment. Even in Western countries that pride themselves on rule of law, the pattern is eerily familiar: more cameras, more AI, more real name rules, more data sharing between private platforms and the state, more rhetoric about, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Pieces that look innocuous on their own. Digital IDs, CBDCs, AI policing tools, internet content filtering, can be snapped together later into something much closer to the Chinese model than anyone wants to admit. In emergencies, the snaps happen faster. 9/11, a pandemic, a riot, a cyber attack, each becomes a justification for extending powers that rarely fully roll back. China's system shows where that road leads when there are almost no breaks to a world where privacy is a memory. Intimate details of your movements, relationships, and beliefs are available to a small group of gatekeepers. Dissent is self-policed. People censor themselves not because they agree, but because they feel watched and fear quiet reprisal: a job lost, a loan denied, a child's opportunity blocked. Identity is compulsory. To live, you must be logged in. Analog anonymity fades. Every door requires a scan. Every transaction leaves a trail. Of control is deniable. Algorithmic systems make it hard to point to a single human decision. It was an error. It was the system. Responsibility becomes diffuse just as power becomes concentrated. You might think, that's terrible, but I'm safe. My country isn't like that. The hard question is, are you sure? Look at how fast your own environment changed in the last 10 years. More biometrics at borders, more data sharing for your convenience, more content moderation for your safety, more talk of digital IDs to access services, more interest in CBDCs among central banks. These are not copies of China's system, but they are as compatible with it. They could, under the right political and technological conditions, be assembled into something much closer than you think. So what do you do with this information? You could shrug, say, I have nothing to hide, and trust that every future government, every police department, every private platform that holds your data will always be benevolent, always be wise, always resist the temptation to use what they know about you for purposes you might not like. That is the bet millions in surveillance states made before you. It didn't end well for them. Or you could start doing what this channel always urges you to do: zoom out, see the pattern, and stop confusing convenience with safety. The pattern is this one. Every tool built in the name of safety and efficiency will eventually be used for control as Spadar 2, As every data stream you share can and will be combined with others to paint a clearer picture of you than you have of yourself, the 3. Every crisis will be used to normalize a new layer of visibility into your life, yours be 4. Once a full spectrum surveillance and control system is in place, it does not voluntarily dismantle itself. China just happens to be the first major power to assemble almost the entire stack: identity, sensors, AI, scoring, and enforcement. That makes its system the most dangerous surveillance framework in history. Not just for the people under it now, but as a clear's template for what others might build. You can't single-handedly change Beijing's choices. You probably can't stop your own government from buying cameras or piloting digital currencies, but you can change how you think from passive consumer of platforms and policies to someone who asks, what machine am I feeding? Because once a system like this is fully built and normalized, opting out stops being a choice. The only real place you still have leverage is now, while parts of it are still being assembled, marketed, and sold as progress. This isn't paranoia, and it isn't about hating any country or any people. It's about understanding power in the 21st century, the power to see, remember, and shape the behavior of entire populations in real time. China has just shown the world what that power looks like when it's fully wired. The only question left is who copies it, and where you'll be standing when they do.